for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumine, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me here today. I hope that everyone has had enough time to sort of settle down since the last video, which was pretty intense. I've had probably one of the most intense weekends in my life, and it's been pretty dramatic. So I want to talk about something that is just coming up to the surface as an important topic to talk about. It's not really a topic, it's just a way of life. Because once you start to talk about the nature of Christ and Christ's path and resurrection and all of that, there's some very specific things that you really have to know about. And these things cannot come through knowledge. And I've been talking about this and the experience of the human self and the embodiment of the Christ and the compassion for the human experience, and probably more intensified in the last year or so, also in my Patreon group. And I've been noticing this development within, also with the people and the group in itself. It's like there is still a very small portion of understanding within humanity, you know, and it's not just about specific few people, you know. I never talk about just specific few individuals or so, but you have to think in terms of global trends and where we are in our consciousness. So I've been observing for a few years now how this path of so-called spirituality has in a way created a gap between the real embodiment of the Christ and our intrinsic knowledge, which comes through the connection with Holy Spirit, which is something that, as you know, Christians know about. And they talk about this as having the Holy Spirit within, like being born and birthed through the Holy Spirit essence. So in the spiritual tradition, though, there has now, and especially in the recent few years, has been this development that this pursuit of more knowledge and more information is sort of what leads us into what it's called the Christ consciousness, you know. And everyone nowadays seems to believe that they're somewhere where they're yet not. And we all have these blind spots. And what I've been noticing is, especially within the last year or so, because I was going through a major difficulty in my life, and then also in my group surroundings, which is the work I do there, that I go much deeper, right? I've been noticing this dynamic because each time I've shared about this, because I wanted to represent that the mission of Christ embodiment on this planet full of duality and everything that we see now, that's a part of this matrix, and the way we truly master ourselves is difficult. It is difficult to the very extent. And when you actually start embodying principles, when you start embracing life as it is, when you start surrendering to these aspects that the Christ is sort of, you know, it's sort of enveloping, right? As you go much deeper, it's like you can't stay ignorant, and you can't replace these aspects by more spiritual knowledge, which in truth, you know, when there were these mystery schools, this knowledge was gained gradually. And what we have happening now is people starting to get this thirst activated for more knowledge. You know, they get more thirsty, more knowledge, more spiritual truth, more higher truths. And one of the more important parts that I came here in this planet, you know, the first one is, as a creation pillar, I came to see certain energies that were not here before and open this gate for novelty, for newness, like understandings and embodiments that were never present in the human system before. So what happens is, you know, the people who believe in this path of discipleship, which in truth is very rigid, because for me the only discipleship that truly is and exists is the inner devotion, right? The communion with Holy Spirit that you hold within yourself. And for me, the first part of my purpose is that, right? It's the Holy Spirit communion I perform every day, and it's a living experience. It's met through the difficulties in my life, the challenges in my life, right? And I was trying to demonstrate this and have a few of these physical witnesses there that would at least have a minimum understanding of this process, because where most people who've been as earth-dwelling souls experiencing this realm for such a long time, they went on this path of, gaining this path through knowledge. But the goddess came, and at a certain point she said enough, right? She made this cut, and she wanted to bring a new path of unfolding for those beings who'd be ready for that, right? This inner communion of light. So then the second part of what I perceive my purpose, and I know it to be, is this anchoring, the seeding of what I came here to bring. Only the third aspect is then spreading, sharing this way, bringing the harbinger, right, aspect, and the communion with others. So that's only, right, the third level, and it's the same with everyone. What we have happening now is the moment you get excited about like this elevated experience, right, because you find out about something spiritual, and you get so excited about that what you actually start doing, instead of going deeper than that, which is originally essentially brought to you, right, to the first surface layer, and it's truly a gradual process, you get excited about it, right? And that's why I perceive most people who lead these immense spiritual discussions with others, they're still off point, because this is an inner process. This belongs to the first part of this inner dweller path, right? The true embodiment of Christ. So this path, right, when you do yourself this anchoring, seeding process, because first is communion, right? Communion with Holy Spirit. The second is the anchoring and the embodiment process, and only the third one is the sharing aspect and the connectivity and the group level, right? So in that second aspect, we seem to forget about what I call this ancient respect. And I'm still noticing a very tremendous disrespect and disregard, especially for those people who are true harbingers and bringers of this change and this novelty of life. Because Spirit is always telling me, people don't appreciate things because until they have a true value and meaning in their own life, which means there must be a point of application there, which means there must be integration, which means there must first in priority be understanding there, right? And because someone is not at the level of perceiving something, they can apply it, they won't have a sense of gratitude. They won't even understand something had a real activation point and a meaning that was deeply triggering for them in their life. So they don't hold a space of gratitude, which means without gratitude, you can't have respect. And I've been noticing people seem to pursue these different paths, and they're going from one stream to the other, and there's always someone else to, to apparently not have the upholding of something that they project that needs to be, because that's obviously what makes someone a builder of that authority. Because when someone has authority, right, they become a valuable source and resource. So what I've been doing, I have to be really honest here with you again, this is a deep, authentic sharing, don't forget that's how I do things, is the moment you humble yourself, and these experiences of truly walking into Christ, not babble-dabble talking about it, is you will humble yourself, and the part of this will be experiencing the harshness of life, of duality, of density, of people leaving you, of people disrespecting you, of having no physical support, having basically no means to an end, and sometimes even losing all that you believe you had, right? And for some, that would be, let's say, our work that we do here, because it has a certain structure, right? Even our work has a structure. But don't forget, the work does not belong in the first three categories. That's just the building of that, which is your first primary, right? The first trinity built of the primary of who you are, truly. So what happens then, right, because of that, is we become almost like complacent. We don't have a high regard for the true meaning of something and the value of something in our life, because we've at a certain point forgot about this integration path. So people are becoming like trying all these different narratives, and we call this the seekers of truth. And then again, you're always going to be a seeker. What happens the moment you have a projection, because someone has to have that authoritarian nature for you to even trust them, or to build a discipleship, that people call this discipleship around them. But in truth, discipleship is an internal thing. So when people project and they have this idea of someone being that for them, and I've had a lot of people telling me, oh, I love you, and I'm like, no, you don't love me. You love how I make you feel. And I have to be really honest and radical how I talk about these things. You know, I've talked about this with Susan Ashley. We had an interesting conversation around that, and she said yes, of course, people come to you and they feel safe, and as long as you're there, right, you're the safety rock and the safety net. So people want more than just, you know, the guidance they receive from you. They want to also be a friend, a companion, all of this, right? So the moment you do like this, because people still overstep the boundaries, they don't understand that there's still something more, right? They can't just like take more and more. So then people build this quasi relationship based on this idea they have, and usually oftentimes it's parental, because most people on this planet, let's face it, they did not have that genuine parental upbringing and true guardianship and guidance, right? So the moment this illusion starts to dissolve, you will realize that the person you thought they need to be your guide, your friend, your companion, possibly even your lover. And at the moment you see, you know, I'm dissolving these illusions, and all of a sudden this person is no longer what you thought them to be, and you see them in a different way. So what happens is you say, it's them. They, right? They are the reason that I feel this way. But it's basically your own illusion starting to dissolve, because we can't be that for another. We can't hold a space of discipleship together, truly, right? We have this ancient idea, because even the path of what, let's say, began as the initiates of the Christ, which started not just with a mission of our beloved Jesus the Christ, but it was way before. This path was even before him. And it's rooted into star systems and other galactic civilizations and beings, light beings, who we already become. We've become Christed like eons ago, and we are within the order of the golden Christ, or the cosmic Christ, how Spirit calls it. And it's just basically passing the torch and the baton on. But what a lot of people don't see is that the moment you're really actually at the verge, you know, because at the first stages you're just building an ideology around what that is, and that's where most people are, like building like a safety net, like if this is it, then I will follow this path because I have an idea about what the Christ is. Well, the second part, now we're in that, what the path is about, right? The second part of this path is truly a disintegration, a dissolution, even a destruction of everything what you first thought that is. So you have to, what you're building in the first round, like there are many merry-go-rounds, right? You actually have to start dissolving, which is going to be a very difficult process. And this is where a lot of people, the spiritual people, are, especially those who already pursue the path of the Christ. And usually that's where it gets tricky and difficult, and projection starts to fall off. And people who you thought, you know, they're your guide, and then all of a sudden they're human standing right in front of you, they show their human traits, you're like, oh, they're no longer the guru, you know. And that's been happening on this planet for so long. It's like people who were guides and gurus and so on, right? I'm talking about people who are genuinely here for this reason, not self-proclaimed title bringing, self-entitlement, making money, profit, all those things, right? And it's always been like they were not allowed to be a certain way. They always had to wear a certain kind of clothing. They had to behave in a certain way. They only had to be seen within a certain group of people. And they had this distance with people, you know. So the moment you start allowing people in, people lose that sense of respect. And we've talked about that in the last part of the video. So for me recently, I've undergone a major transformation where I've truly seen that like the people who come to me for guidance, I can't also be their friend and caretaker and mommy or daddy or any of these roles that, let's face it, a lot of people who haven't done the true meaning. Like you have to do this inner child work first. And I know we talk about it, like this inner child is everywhere. But a lot of what we think this work to be will only show itself, what it truly is, when we go to the next round, right? There's like levels. So first layer is like building, and it's like you're doing like this, right? And you're seeking, you're a seeker. In the second part, you're actually an apprentice. And only the third round, you're starting to see what it feels to actually start walking the sovereignty of the mastery. So most people are still seeking. Some people are starting to understand what true discipleship, which is this being an apprentice, means. But if you lose that sense of respect, and that doesn't mean, you know, it's not a certain way, which means like it comes in tiny details. So if you think, oh, I can be disregarding in this way and disrespectful, but it's only towards this person, it's only in this way, so it doesn't affect where I am spiritually. Well, let me tell you, it does affect you, because God or Spirit of Christ is in details. So in these tiny details, we're all being initiated. And if you're losing a sense of what that truly is a lot of people, they keep on missing it. They keep on missing the target of what that truly should be and is. And so it's like a game in truth, right? I know we can't take it so seriously, but at the same time, the initiations themselves are built a certain way. Only now we're living and breathing them more organically than in the past. They used to be more scheduled and orchestrated, and there were these temple paths and mystery schools. But at a certain point now, because everything is so on the loose, on the go, and it's organic, we've lost sacredness for it, right? Because at a certain point, everyone can now be a teacher and establish what they call the work, or write a book, or become a best-selling author. And in the same way, anyone can become a self-proclaimed apprentice. But let me tell you, there's inner mechanisms that the soul still has, because the soul belongs to a greater realm of spirit, and the spirit is that indicative force that will naturally pull you towards where you are. So if you are constantly missing the target, missing the point, spirit will pull you elsewhere, and it's going to uproot you, and it's going to bring you to where you still need to do the actual field work. You know, it's like in school, you start to build theory too much, and it gets too exciting, and you just want to stay with that because you get too much into it, and the teacher will tell you, no, we're going to do the field work today. That's kind of how that is. So the spirit will pull you through your soul, and it will take your resonance elsewhere. Not because that thing which you're actually aiming is bad and false, and it's actually about the other or the teacher, but it's because you yourself have to be brought to an element of really becoming the embodiment of what you think you're being trained for. So these things are, you know, they're tricky, because let me give you one example. There's levels, right? How people pursue themselves and how they behave. And I'm noticing there's people who, when they're being triggered, because there's so many triggers, especially now at this point, you know, it's not just humanity and the unawake and unaware people being triggered. Let me tell you, the spiritual people are actually the ones being really, really triggered, because this is the round, this is the second round. Because beings who came here to assist, we've had that, we've experienced that, and we came on the other side when it comes to our awareness. But now it's on those people who are becoming these apprentices themselves. And that's what they're going to have the greatest challenges in life, because if they were in any regard disrespectful for the challenges of others and did not understand what this path truly is, but they wanted to pursue it more and more in theory and through knowledge, eventually they're going to hit a boomerang. And this is not a punishment. This is a natural way of how the soul learns, and it grows and evolves. Because all life is truly interconnected. So you can't say what you said or did somewhere along the line and how you treated someone who was actually your guide, and you should have treated them with respect and gratitude, and you left in that vehement kind of cutting it off, thinking you're better than that. You're gonna have your own spiel, you know, playing out eventually. And it's not like, oh, the law of instant karma. No, it's just how things work when you truly want to pursue the path. Because if you're just saying you're pursuing the path, but you're actually always hitting a wall, you eventually will hit a wall, and the wall is going to be pretty big and thick. So there's one example I wanted to give you is, there's people who, you know, they're just drastically are triggered, and they really act out in a weird way, and they have no regard for even the slightest amount of showing love, kindness, and respect. So if anything or anyone at a certain point acted to you as your teacher and your guide, when you leave with respect, okay? And that's a very important part of this path. So then there's people who would, I'm noticing this as well, who know that you need to be in alignment and integrity, and you have to be in congruence, your words with your actions and the deeds, right? But they're still having a control, because they're trying to manipulate this sense of reality, because it's not coming through their feeling. So what they're doing, and I'm noticing this a lot in people, and I know it's funny, but it's not really funny, but it is at the same point, because it's all like a game, right? People's behaviors and egos, and for me, I'm very detached from all of that, because I come from a place of light beings where all we have and know is pure honor, love, and respect, and that's all I've ever known in my inner life. But in the outer life, wasn't like this, to be honest. It was completely the opposite. So the second part of how we can act out is, like, people want to come out as, I'm respectful, but it's not felt within, so they're trying to manipulate that sense of how they're going to act. It's still false. And the third level is when they're truly honoring, and you will feel that. So I often wonder, when people, when they act a certain way, or, sometimes people write me and they come and they go. And I'm wondering, when people give me this last response, or sometimes people say goodbye and these things, and I'm often wondering like this, like, do people even know that I actually feel everything they're communicating to me? It's like, who do they think I am, truly? It's like, do people think I'm blind? Do they think I'm an idiot? Because I am what I am. I see, I know, I feel. I don't go for the words. Words are easy. Words are tricky. Words are the greatest tricksters if you don't use them in total, utter congruence, right? And so I'm often thinking, what does this person think? That I won't see through what they're saying, writing, communicating? You see, this path of true Christ embodiment it has layers. You're not here and then you're there. So people we've all had difficulties and struggles in our life. There's no single individual human that hasn't. But it's how we move through them and how much respect and humility we allow that enters into our life because of these experiences. And there's people who had the worst and they start behaving at the worst as a result. And then there's people who've experienced the worst but have been graced by the beauty of spirit. And just recently I had this amazing example in my life. I've told you how honored and blessed I was by meeting Susan Ashley, which is, I adore and respect so very much. And I'm humbled by her presence in general in my life now as well. I didn't expect, when I met her a few years ago, well, I knew about her many years because she used to come to Slovenia, and this woman I used to know said, well, she's doing this work and I'm going to invite you one day to the workshop, but she didn't. So, wasn't meant to be. Somehow I found her online, I don't know, years later, and then I had my first session with her. It was very general, just to talk, and then this year, as you know, I had like a deeply insightful healing session. But it was interesting because I didn't expect anything, just came with this respect for her work and doing an exchange. And then somehow we started really coming into communication and like aligning with each other, but the way we correspond with one another and the way we are finding analogies within ourselves is through difficulties in our life, because we both had and been through hell, literally. But that hell made us better. It made us better humans. It made us more compassionate. It didn't make us into, ego monsters. And that's the difference, right? Everyone can experience hell. But being truly an illumined being and penetrating this, piercing these veils of ignorance and thickness of separation, you're going to come out on the other side, on the other end, always, time and time again. And these initiations will only grow your spirit. It will harness who you truly are, and you can't fool yourself, and you can't fool people who are already illumined. Like, people can't fool me, no matter how much they try. I don't care. I am my own person. I'm my own being. And I've had this years ago in my first galactic reading. I remember I had, and the reader, the woman, told me, people can't lie to you. Like, seriously, it's even in your chart. They can't lie to you. And people always have been trying to lie to me their whole life. And people think lying is when you say, I'm going there, and they're hiding, they're actually going there. That's not the only lie. You tell a lie every time you're not being authentic. Every time you write to someone and you give them only a little mirage image of what you're truly meaning. And then you're even going out onto others and they're like, blah, 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 talking behind their backs. That's even worse. That's doubled and tripled. And the moment you start talking about others behind their backs and all these things, you're just setting yourself to a fall, because you think, oh, that doesn't affect my path, because when I'm doing the spiritual studies, I'm actually aligning myself with spirit. No, no, no. Spirit goes both ways, vertical, horizontal. I've been teaching and embodying and demonstrating this for years, but people go like this, let me tell you, poof, poof, in and out, right? And that's why sometimes it's a struggle for me to penetrate this realm with my core purity and a sense of humility and humanity, because each time you'll trigger a person, or in general, just because everything I do, I generalize things, but sometimes it's very much on the point, and someone who eventually it comes a point of saying, wow, that's me, she's talking about me, but I'm not talking about them, it's just the pattern. And recently someone told me, oh, you don't know me at all, and I said, perhaps, but I know human patterns, because higher beings, we understand because we've went through this already and we see how it goes. And it's like, come on, seriously, recognize this or you're going to fail each time. And it's not like it's an expectation. that it's serving you, and you're serving the totality of life by honestly pursuing this path, not lying to yourself by saying, oh, I'm actually pursuing the true Christ because it should be like this. And people have this false perception about what this path is about. And if they see someone suffering, they would say, oh, this person's still suffering, they must not be enlightened. I told you that there's something we call enlightenment when you come into your inner presence this way. For me, that happened years ago. But then there's illumination, which is a pathway of using that enlightenment to penetrate the dark, and it's veils and thickness and layers. So each time you think, you're there, I've arrived, a new wave crashes. And we're trying to show this to people. And I've been, because of that, talking about my own experience, because I was not like humiliating myself. In a way, yeah, you do humiliate yourself often, because you're out there vulnerable in the open, and people can shoot their darts at you because you've actually exposed everything. You've said, this is how it is, and I'm going through this, and I'm suffering in all this, but at the same time, I'm growing in my Christ. And people are saying, ugh, it's not how it should be. Ugh, too messy. You know, I've experienced everything. People saying, that's not mine to deal with. Oh, that's too messy. Oh, that's not how it's supposed to be. I'm going to stay in my verticality. Well, do your own thing. But it's not going to move you. You won't be moved. You know, the earthquake shakes the earth for a reason, because there's movement there. That's how the goddess works. It liberates. And the moment you start, I'm noticing this, right? For years now, when you generalize things, it's easy. But when someone eventually recognizes, ooh, that's something she's talking about, reminds me of me, so must be about me. So she's talking about me, but I'm not, right? And I'm noticing it's not just one person, it's many, many people, because that's how the ego thinks. It's like it identifies, and then it feels attacked, and it feels exposed, and in that exposure it feels vulnerable. But the moment you don't want to be vulnerable, you're like, I'd rather go into knowledge, because the knowledge will have the real answer for me. You're basically trying to detach yourself from your body. And that's the reason why the Christ will not be embodied in this way. Like ever, you can just write it off now if that's what you're thinking. So it's like I've noticed as well that the moment you take these things so personally and you feel, ooh, you know, and you get triggered, then the ego will give you, it will give you a false narrative it will give you a reason to exit that, because it feels uncomfortable. So it will tell you, well, leave that group, or leave that teacher, or, you know, don't trust them anymore. And it's like it will give you a validation, but it will validate your pattern. The patterns of the ego, it's like the ego is basically just a narrative, but the pattern is a real thing, right? Ego is something we generalize, this is it, but it has no substance. The patterns, they do, because you can see them like mini holograms. They're written around what should actually be our true essence of the soul, right? And what it's creating through its creative essence. Truly living life and truly creating within life. That's totally different than doing this, right? And only being or receiving teachings. So the teaching and this has to be always like one thing, like this, right? Spreading into life. When it's like this, failure every time, truly. And it's so interesting how little people can see or are willing even to see about themselves. Sometimes it takes so little. It takes only one simple sentence. I allow that narrative or whatever, what I'm perceiving, maybe it's targeted or aimed at me, I'm simply allowing for that to be a part of this reality, part of my reality. I'm simply allowing myself an opportunity, that there is a possibility, there's an opportunity, that there is something there. But what's happening? Failure each time after time again. People are not even allowing that to be a possibility. So they say, that's not for me, it's not mine to deal with. It's like anxiously going, and it's like trying to find the spot like everywhere, and thinking the next thing or the next best thing or the next book or the next teacher will be better. But that is all preparation work, but it never truly does catapult us into the third stage, right? So when you do the second part, the apprentice, in an integrated manner, you can catapult yourself into the third aspect, which is really doing, this is where you truly do start doing the self-mastery work. This is the deep work. So people who are all like this, they're still doing the preparation. Once you start this respect, once you start, you know, really pursuing that, this is when you begin to really learn. And that third level is when you actually start doing your own work. And it's going to become like inner narrative, like this, life, right? The pursuit of life. So I've been so humbled with Susan's presence in my life because I myself have been willing to humble myself. And on my page where I do the work, I've often talked about these direct experiences. Like, who will ever expose so much about themselves? Who will be so transparent in what they're living through and experiencing? No one. Everyone is trying to present this idea about themselves and how masterful they are and all of that. And it's trickery. It's like, hocus pocus thing that like a magician on stage is doing tricks. Everyone can pull tricks, with especially people with very high knowledge, because they know how to turn things around like very easily, But that's not a true alchemist. Sorry, I'm doing it like this. These, these fluffy thingies, they're very itchy. Sorry. So what is actually happening, is people have lost this purity of seership, of being thought through life directly. And how experiences humble you. Yeah, sometimes you feel humiliated, but on the other side of humiliation is humility. And people who actually allow themselves to be humiliated, who allow themselves to be driven over, stepped on, all of that, and still walk on the other side, resurrect, pure, without any entanglement and resentment, bigotry. I don't know what I'm saying this. It's like these people have a chance of doing the embodiment work. Only these few. And it truly is only a few. There's a lot of people awakening on our planet. But in terms of illumination and illumin union and illumin Christ consciousness, there's going to be such a selective few who are actually going to get it and are actually going to allow themselves to simply embrace life and all of its traits and all of its stories and all of the experiences. And that's how you truly walk with honor, with dignity and grace. So there's only people, how I say, and I've experienced in life, who've gone through the thick of it and have risen. These people know what compassion means, and they're always willing to help another. And that's how I always was. And giving often too much of myself too soon when the other wasn't yet there to be recipient of such an honor and such glory. But I've now witnessed this beautiful, almost like a karmic graceful reward, because I have never been approached the way that, Susan's been approaching me. And she saw, because she had a session with me, she saw my luminescent essence, and she saw the immense knowledge I have and the energy. She said no one has, it's so new. And because of that, she sort of allowed herself to also open up to me, because I know she's had terrible experiences with people calling themselves spiritual. And again, there's so many people who actually use spirituality to steal energy from people, to steal their work. It's terrible, and you won't believe it because you're always up here in the light, but these things happen. And it's terrible, but it is what it is, and we have to see it. We have to have this X-ray vision that sees through this, and that's what it means to truly be in the essence. And she was there, and when I shared with her my difficulties and struggle, she was actually willing to help me. And she was looking for opportunities because she's gone through a difficult life herself. That's the only reason. And she understands how it is to be a woman with immense, incredible vastness of knowing, but so totally unsupported. And it was interesting because that's how we connect. We're so different, as humans, truly. But that's, I think, our point of similarity where we connect. And I've often talked about how group resonance is not built overnight. So people who've started joining my Patreon group, right? There was this group and people were like, oh, we're now this group and we're this illumined beings. And it's like, no, it doesn't go that fast. I'm sorry. It doesn't. And people get disappointed because they have this expectation. It's like, you don't become something overnight. You don't become a member and you get all the benefits. Or it's simply, imagine how it is to get everything easy in life. We don't grow, we don't learn. We don't know how it is to truly create with spirit, within, intrinsically, in such purity of your essence that everything else can truly step aside eventually, So what I've also noticed is eating, yummy. What I've also noticed is that what happens with people, especially who are not willing to step within their own spirit and do the work, where they're too tied onto a certain belief system, They're always going to seek more, seeking more knowledge. It's like there's literally people who sit around every day and they would watch everyone in the spiritual circles and all of their videos. Like how can you do that truly? How will you raise your own spirit? How will you even know yourself in that regard? You can't. I mean, I know it's always pleasant to watch someone else and connect in that way. But it's literally what we need most now is this interconnection, and it's very difficult for some people to just sit with their spirit. And it's not just in meditation, because sometimes it's in utter silence and emptiness and the unknown, and this is very uncomfortable for people still as of yet. So I'm always telling people I just challenge narratives, because I'm all about the truth. I don't care what you think about me, what you perceive about me at this moment. People are people. That's what they do. That's where they are. So I don't bother too much with that, but I do bother in the way truth is truly presented. Truth wants to be pure. It wants to be non-obstructed, and people do that. Truth does not do that. People do that, right? They will shape it and morph it so it fits them and their current reality and their current perception about themselves, which is difficult. So when someone speaks about this in the actual way, people are like, I don't want to hear about that. I would rather hear about how to gain my superpowers, how to become a superhuman and do amazing things with my hands and the energy. Well, that's not what we're here for, by the way. We are here to love, and everything that comes to us is a gift. It's a gift of grace. Is a natural birthing of that. It's like you as a compassionate human. So I've been noticing a difference when I was sharing about these challenges within my Patreon group, and there was only like maybe 2 people who literally actually wrote to me in the way like, if I could help you, I would do this. If I could come there, you know, they literally live elsewhere. But these people are amazing. They could say, if I could do this, I would. If there's anything you need to do. And then there's level of people who would say, oh, you're better than this and you're up in this. It's like, what do you think I am? I'm in my human body now. I'm a hybrid. I'm half like being half human, and I'm being under attack. And it's like, you see, these people negate the reality of what the Christ is and how difficult it is. How difficult it is to actually embody the Christ. How the whole of the matrix will start to resist this. Your desire to be in this pure embodiment, not just like to pursue it. That's why people who are only vertically pursuing the Christ, they're never going to start actually truly getting these difficulties, because once you start bringing it like this into this horizontal plane, you're going to be kicked and kicked, you know, until you sometimes feel like you have no more energy left. And that's how I felt for the last year. There's moments when I'm like, I can't deal anymore. And then the next day I find more strength. And the moment I say I can't do it anymore, the next day there's more strength. And I get karmic grace from someone else, you know, and that's what that path is about. And you have to be humble through life. And Christ's path has tremendous challenges when it comes to the embodiment, not like the ideology of it, right? Which is like upwardly focused. And it's easier. I know there's a lot of pain behind it, and there's a lot of spiritual folks who are covering mass amounts of pain, and that pain was never brought to surface. They're not even realized that they have this pain there. They haven't started discovering it yet. And that's why none of these people even wants to touch the subject of darkness. It's like, yes, it exists, it's here, it's there, it's in the Vatican, it's there, but it's not all present, and it's not also in my life. I'm all about the light, so it can never touch me. Let me tell you this, the moment that you are as a being fully claimed by the essence of Holy Spirit, you will always be vulnerable to the deeds and acts of the darkness, because you have these blind spots, and all of these aspects need to become resurrect. That's what we're doing. That's why I'm doing an embodiment, demonstrating this work. But it gets difficult for some people. For other people, no, the first group, I would say, they don't understand what it is. That's okay. They haven't even begun the building, the foundation work. That's cool, right? That's where they are. And there's people who eventually gets too hard for them. And then there's people who start projecting because they have an idea of what this is. And these people will actually have the most difficulty with releasing that, because they're so deeply entrenched in the idea what that is, that the true nature, the true narrative can't even be presented to them. It's like it can be right there in front of your face, it's a lotus and it's pulsating, and you're looking there and you're saying, no, it's a rose. You're looking like this and it's kind of pulsating, and you're like this. And it's like, hello. I'm sorry, sometimes I use these simple narratives and examples, but literally that's how it is. So what happened also with me this weekend, I've noticed, I've experienced and noticed a tremendous commanding of my energy, of my own like creation energy in action, because a few days ago I went on top of this cliff and I told you, I commanded the energy, and I literally said, I'm jumping off the cliff if something doesn't change, you know, like if I don't experience this karmic grace, enough is enough. And after that I had this birthing experience. I'm going to talk about it on Patreon, what this is in terms of divine trinities of life. There's 2 trinities. And what this last final point was presented, and I had this ritual, it was amazing. And then what I experienced was the uprooting, like literally uprooting of my essence from where it was anchored, because it was anchored in this place here in these Alps for so long. And although the life was no longer supporting me here and it was getting very unpleasant in the last year or so, I still was here because I was so anchored here in this place, and I had to learn how to actually uproot. And when I learned more and more about my power and how to harness it, it's a natural thing, like it's organic. It's not something you can learn. That's why I'm saying the Christ path is the only path that leads to these greater creation gifts and abilities. And when the people wake up for the first time, they're always about, oh, what are my soul gifts and what's my purpose? Who will tell me that? How do I realize that? You can't. No one can tell you. Not even an Akashic reading. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. I know people like to make money off of that, and some people, I know they're doing amazing work. But it's not something that can be in actuality. It cannot be given to you. It has to be earned. It has to be witnessed and integrated from within. So it's like intrinsically known and taken as for what it is, truly. It's that which is the absolute. It's not an ideology what the absolute is. And I know people who are like this, they get so worshipy, and I hate that. I'm sorry. I really hate it. When people get like, oh, Goddess Aurea, oh, I'm like, stop it. It's actually demeaning. And people don't realize that. They think they're being very respectful in this way by showing up for you apparently this way, but it's actually demeaning because it's fanatic. It's not honoring our physicality. And that's why I've noticed such a huge difference with people who are in the group, because when I've shared about these things, so many responses were like, oh yeah, but this is like how it is in spiritual blah blah. You don't share your most vulnerable experience and get a concept in return. What the heck is this? When have we turned into spiritual robots who quote things from these quasi-learned examples? If you ever experienced that in your own life, no. So you don't know yet, okay? But at least give the space of that unknowing and honor what's being shared as an, wow, this is what this is. This is interesting. You know, we've forgotten how it is to be innocent in our being and simply say, oh, I don't know about this because it's not my experience. But how interesting life can unfold this way. How interesting this path of the Christ. And it can get so dark at times, but that darkness is at the same time is light being illuminated through the dark. Wow, how interesting. We've forgotten that, and we've started replacing it with more ideology and spiritual concepts. It's just what it is. You can't have someone open and rip their heart out and you get uncomfortable and all you can offer is a few spiritual quasi-concepts and ideologies. Come on. But on the other hand, you have people who've been through it themselves. And the moment you share difficulties, they are the ones who actually understand the embodiment process. They understand the humane nature. They understand humanity, what it means to be human. They're earthed people. They're not earthlings, but they're earthed. They're grounded. They're embodied. They know how it is to walk the talk. They know how it is to be in their essence. And these people, you instantly know, because they're going to say, what can I do to serve you? Because you serve life and I serve life. But what in this moment can I do for you? Or they're going to bring you an opportunity or a possibility because they're in their spirit. They're receiving guidance. They're going like this. They're receiving guidance, not ideologies. Okay? So it's so interesting to see how we've narrowed down the whole essence of life, which for me, spirituality, the only spirituality is the inner communion with spirit. The pursuit of spirituality is your own path. However way you pursue it, it's your own choice. But it steps and steps towards more and more of self-acknowledgement, self-acceptance, self-realization, self-actualization. But it's steps. And how you pursue it, of course, is your choice. But that choice, what you pursue in terms of teaching, is not separate from how you treat others. And I've often been told, even way, way before I've started this work, especially on Patreon, the Illumined Union work, when I started that like 2 years ago, I was told that my novelty, my newness, my new energetics will often be misplaced and mistaken for something else because I'm very much like this, the way I deliver it. It's like, it's on to the point. And people say, that's too raw. Ooh, that's too much for me. Okay, maybe too much for you, but maybe not for someone who understands. And it's meant for that someone. And maybe in one moment, it's also meant for you when you no longer evaluate it in a certain way. But when you simply experience it, because remember again the threefold nature of the goddess or nature of life. The crone, the mother, and the child or the maiden. All of these faces are one. Love is not just like, oh, I love a baby, I love a child, and I love in this way. Love is fierce. That's how I get when I'm in this, you know, when darkness tries to penetrate my field. Do you think I'm going to do like, oh, I love you, darkness, lovey-dovey? Sorry, guys. I go like this. And it scares people. This energy literally scares them. And they would say, that's dark. No, that's light meeting darkness at an equality level. That's what it is. And that takes guts. It takes courage, and it takes total commitment of your spirit coming through form. And it's easy to say, doop, 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 doop. Doop, 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 doop. I'm sick of that, to be honest. Like people who've never been through the thick of it, through Christ, like literally pulling it downwards, and they're allowing themselves and thinking they have the right to judge. Those of us who are doing this work night and day, constantly bombarded with heaviness, still doing it, still here, still surviving. I'm sorry, but I am tired of that, because it's no longer about people who are unawake and they're asleep and they're the sleepers. No. Just because you are pursuing something spiritual, you know, doesn't mean that you're not at the same time vulnerable to aspects of life that are negating all of life, that are judging other aspects of life, that are projecting ideologies, that are having misconceptualization about the experiences of others or experiences in general, and holding separation because of all of those things. So to truly walk the path of embodiment, the best way is to let go and to be very organic in life. Like I go out all the time. Nature is my space, it's my altar, it's my church. And it teaches me about life. So when I'm like, oh, I can't take it anymore, and then I go to nature, I'm softened, I'm soothed. I don't take out my anger on people, on others. Never. Look at this beauty here. These puffies, they're like swirling upwards in the wind. I mean, that's for me is the truest nature of what spiritual means. Like the closest I could get to saying spirituality is when I'm outside in nature. It has nothing to do with books or scriptures or anything like that. But it's not just being outside and having a walk. It's this, oh, wow. So I guess that's life. That's life. All the other aspects, right? It's our training, our experiences, our apprenticeship, all of that. And let me now tell you the last important thing. All these three things I've talked to you about, inner communion, apprenticeship, right? Or discipleship, whatever you call it, and self-integral mastery. We always are all three. So when you say, oh, I'm this and I'm only that, you're never just a teacher, right? But you're not a student in a way that you would be, other people would like teach you like this. This is how you need to do things. life holds us at all these three levels. Life has us. Life knows what we need. But you, and sometimes us and our big mouths, right, as humans, we don't always know. We all sometimes have a state when we feel life isn't treating us kindly or nicely. But when you're truly in your spirit and you're taking care of the first aspect, which is the inner communion, instead of taking it out on others and doing that walk of shame, making others feel bad because you feel something bad or off, you don't do that. And you go back within, you do the communion. And that's why life knows and recognizes, because life is reading you and reading all of us all the time, because life is alive and it pulsates, and you can't lie to life. That's why you can't lie to yourself. And that's why also you can't lie to another, because they're just another you, right? So in that way, life is allowing you to walk the spiral gracefully, because you're not like this, right? You're not like, no, I don't want to see. Life pulls you, and you're walking this dance of the electromagnetic nature of who you are. And it's organic, so you don't have to say, oh, if I'm spiritual, I have to act and I have to be decent, and if it's still controlled and it's not authentic and you don't feel that in the moment, and even don't try to, make yourself feel, oh, I need to feel respect for this person. If in the moment you don't, that's fine, but what you have to do is be authentic and honest about it. Be in congruence with what you really feel. And there's so many people who would never even admit they have this respect for someone. Just freaking admit it, because that's your salvation. It leads you onto the other side, because the moment you accept this, it's like, oh, you're liberated from it, from the chain of your own lie that it's like was falsely created. It's an idea. And like people have these bubbles that they should all be burst. And my name, my Slovene name Polona, and my spirit name is Aurea. So when people call me only by one name, it's not really authentic, because I'm half-half. So I'm always needing to be addressed as Polona Aurea, because then you're not honoring all aspects of me, right? And it's like my name Polona, it's like the physical name literally means the destroyer. And I didn't know that. It's like people oftentimes in my life came there and told me, you know what your name means? I'm like, no, look it up. And it's like I'm looking it up. Oh, it's interesting, because I do destroy falseness and false narratives and all these projections. And you need to know how to burst your own bubble. I'm just challenging. I can't burst another person's bubble. It's not my job. It's like we are needing to be willing to allow these aspects that are limiting us and limiting our organic friendships and true, honest relationships with others, because we have this idea of ourselves and then others and then the world. So we're needing to learn how to burst our own bubbles. I'm just here to challenge these narratives in general. I'm not attacking ever anyone directly, physically. If people ever feel this way, it's because they recognize something, and there's something behind the door. So don't be afraid to walk through it. There's nothing scary on the other side. The only thing you can do is profit from, acknowledging all these things and aspects. So if anything, life will bring you greater and greater power, not because you know how to master energy more, but because you've unlocked more spirit. Spirit can come more into your form, and spirit is super powerful. Like when I'm noticing powers of my spirit, when I go it's amazing, because before, when I was still younger in terms of the unfolding of my path, it's like I didn't have that profound nature of what I can harness through myself. It takes your own doing, and it's not going to come through control. It's not going to come through the mind. It's not going to come through an ideology. And there were many beautiful teachers who walked this path before who talked about this. So anyway, beloveds, I wish you beautiful blessings. There's some sun left, so I'm going to go hike some of the water by the river here in this beautiful, gorgeous mountain gorge valley, and I will slowly, gradually now, I've uprooted my spirit, so now the body needs to move as well. I'm in this process, like I told you, it's very intense. I don't know how many more videos I'll be able to record. Maybe then after my move, I don't yet know, but I will try to do the Patreon thing still as long as I can for those of you who are there or those who want to join. So courageously onwards, my beloveds. That's all I can say. That's all I can truly say. And so many blessings always with love, wisdom, and power. Take care, okay? Take care of yourself and your loved ones and whatever you love, and illuminating with your own light. Talk to you soon. Bye.